Hello, everyone. My name's Hetian, and I just finished my master's in engineering architecture design in UCL. So today I'm presenting you using existing buildings as material banks in the UK. Building as material banks is a practice for circular economy. And when I was working in an internship, I was especially struck by how this is such a beneficial method for reducing waste and sustainable building method, but it's very far from practice right now. So here I investigated in the the current practice for reuse and the urgency for barriers and suggestions for reuse by interviewing about 10 circular economy experts in the building industry. From my literature review investigations, I realized 3 research gaps on this topic. And then I constructed my research with like interview methodology. I selected my participants from different circular economy events and different company core leaders on the field. And I selected them at least one person for each stakeholder types in the industry. And their experience ranged from 8 years in the industry to 31 years. And 2 pilot studies were carried out before the research was conducted. And these were helpful with constructing the questions and maybe testing out the interview process. So the final interviews were carried out about 30 to 1 hour each one, with just online videos recorded and transcripts, and they were analyzed later with both quantitatively and qualitatively with the help of in vivo software. So I had predefined themes derived from my literature review, adjusted based on my pilot studies, and these could be the barriers, the current reuse practice, the current progress in BM building as material banks. And you can see on the right is kind of the similarities in how it was coded in the software. Yeah. So here are my results. I divided in 3 sections. First section is interviewees' attitude towards the current building as material bank progress in the UK and specific practice in the UK. So people are generally very positive about what's happening. There are increased interest, awareness, and more and more like guidances, official guidances like GLA's like circular economy report that was out this beginning of this year. And there was also negatives like these showing on the screen, such as like the participant 6 who has 31 years of experience in the industry as a sustainability specialist, and she said something. She was like 25. It's been 25 years since the first ever reuse practice that was done in the real industry in the construction, but still right now there's only a handful of projects that reuse building components in their project. And then on to the reuse practices. So on this topic, people were more mixed feelings about what's happening. Client type of stakeholder, case 1, he said something about there are more and more people asking about maybe doing more projects on circular economy and reuse. So there was more information gaps being filled. There were more like consultants come into play. They have more information over it with the clients. And then negatives were case 3 architects who said the problem with that's pretty much a problem with procurement. So it's only easy for BM companies to own demolition sites and reuse the material from them, but it's really just loads of excess assessment needed for insurance and for the clients to be happy to reuse something somewhere else's materials. Secondly, I checked on the barriers and enablers. So every responses, I coded them into the number of times it was mentioned and then the number of participants that mentioned them. So the common ones are showing here. There were a lot of unexpected responses which show the research gap. And importantly, with complexity and the supply side mechanism, one of the stakeholders, 8, who is a reclamation material stockist, and he said basically there's no action in the supply side. No one's trying to work on the supply side. And then on the complexity, everybody's held down by the river stages, by the difficulties to procure, by the demolition difficulties, and even reuse possibilities on site. And these are the enablers, which is quite interesting to see that people want mostly legislative requirements, and other ones includes like collaboration in process. One of the persons thinks that it's important to have more collaboration, especially between stakeholders, as there's a different information gaps exists in the market for each stakeholder due to their own specialties and their own practice. And finally, these are the different stakeholders and their own hierarchy for the hierarchy for each of the barriers they mentioned. And these are quite informative to see what kind of collaboration that could entail in the future for these people, and how to maybe bridge the gap. So, but there's only limited participant in this interview. So, I mean, I feel like further research is needed for this. And finally, it's interesting to see a lot of similarities from past studies, but there's also things that weren't mentioned with supply side mechanism needed for the whole system to run. And also, I think with the different stakeholders, for them to collaborate better, it's important for them to understand each of their role in the industry. And overall, building as material banks practice offers an opportunity for sustainable construction, circular economy, demanding a holistic approach involving stakeholders, education, policies, and research. Thank you.
Any question? I have a
I imagine one of the problems is getting the demolition people to actually, like that happened with that pub the other day. You know, they knock it down because then there's nothing anybody can do.
Yeah. I did talk to one of the person in my interview was a demolition constructor, and he did mention that their barrier for their practice to reuse or resell these reclaimable materials is that normally their practice only allow about 4 months or 4 weeks, 4 weeks for the turnover. So normally after 4 weeks, if they don't receive any interest, and normally that's locally sourced from like people who have DIY residential building projects. If they don't receive that, then they just landfill them. So that's actually their own problem with the, like, because the practice needs so little time to turn around for each business to work. So it's very difficult to collaborate together.
My feeling is that knocking down buildings is a bad idea.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of energy, knocking down one building to build another. Okay, you may say, well, this is a big hotel, and that was just but basically, it's a bad idea, and
Yeah, obviously
not
on the
sure whether-
waste hierarchy, retrofit is much more like efficient than reuse or recycling, but reuse is still very important for if you really have to take on a building, then what can these materials do? And these, like the stockist guy, the steel stockist participant, he said sometimes they even just sell it to farm owners and use it as like poles for their farm barricades, I think. So there are use for sure. It's better than recycling, I think.
interesting thing, but
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Just one question. If I'm not sure if you have interviewed any council officers, but in particular Enfield Council in London that has a project, a platform where they want to recycle and reuse materials, and they want to expand that to the London borough-wide communities and probably elsewhere.
Yeah, I did look into that. It's called Excess Material Exchange, I think. Yeah, and they have a platform. They gather all the local materials and they put it in like abandoned site for people to just claim, sometimes for free. So I think that's what they're doing is really great. But it's about, I think what I want to get from this research is also like, how can we do it UK wide? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really good. Excellent.